Bobby George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Here. Councilor Janey. Present. Councilor McCarthy. Here. Councilor O'Malley. Present. Councilor Presley. Present. Councilor Wu. Present. And Councilor Zachem. We have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I'd like all guests and my colleagues, as well as the council staff, to please rise. Our lovely clerk is going to lead us in the invocation, and then I'm going to invite up Councilor Sabi George to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam President. You join together as one. Each and every time you convene a legislative session such as this. You join together as one each and every time you speak up as a public body to prepare for the work that lies before you this day. Might you begin your time together by inviting in courage, compassion, and commitment. It is by the will of God. It is from the hand of that which is most holy, whatever that God may be. We call upon thee, that these three impulses dwell and grow within us in the name of all that is in you, that has the courage to dream a healthier, less fragmented society. In the name of all that is in you, that you have the compassion to notice the needs and vulnerabilities of many in our community, and all that is in you that moves your heart and your hands to help soothe that distress. In the name of all that is in you that has the commitment to believe that every single effort made on behalf of what could be really matters. In the name of all of this and more, you come together to begin this day. Then, by bringing to the fore, by inviting in, by invoking all the courage, compassion, and commitment that creation has given you. May your hearts and minds, too, be open to receiving even more as you begin this day together. As you ready yourselves for all the work that is etched into your hearts, into the lives of your constituents, and into the written agenda that lies before you today. In a shared moment of silence, then, may you now invoke for yourself. May you invite in these three friends of courage, compassion, and commitment. May these three impulses thrive within you, assisting you in continuing to build a sense of community, one with another around this table, and one with another out there in the wider city that holds us all. May the spirit of courage, the spirit of compassion, and the spirit of commitment sustain you, your families, and your constituents through all that today and tomorrow will bring. We say this, amen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. And thank you to everyone who is in the chamber. It's always nice when this place is packed. We appreciate it. Because of fire code, we're going to ask everyone to squeeze in. So if you can't find a seat, there is an overflow room that we have to probably direct you to, and there will be some councilor staff to do that. But if you could squeeze in, I think we have more than enough room to accommodate folks who are standing. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call up Councilor Wu, who has a special presentation.
Thank you, Madam President, and good afternoon, everyone. Today I have more of a public service announcement than anything else, so if Aaron could come up. I'm bringing up Aaron Troncoso from 350 Mass and the Better Future Project, just to have a real reminder that not only is September National Preparedness Month, and we have seen the need for preparedness to really be an emphasis, not just in the tragedy that happened in Lawrence and Andover and North Andover that I'm glad that so many of my colleagues will be getting the council involved in, but also in our extreme weather events that so many of us, and particularly our Chair of Environment and Sustainability, Councilor O'Malley, talked so eloquently about the increasing frequency of storms and flooding and heat that will draw on our preparedness resources. We see it in North Carolina. We see it. It's just day after day after day. We need to be ready. So I wanted to highlight that in today's consent agenda, the Council will be officially declaring September 24th through 30th next week as Climate Preparedness Week. And as this morning we had a really great briefing with the administration on the city's plans moving forward with some of the infrastructure to help protect us against storms and the changing weather that affect emergency plans. But throughout all of this, whether it's thinking about being ready for storms, thinking about adapting to weather, thinking about what to do when our unacceptably shoddy infrastructure in many cases gives way, grassroots engagement is really central to that, and we want communities first and foremost to be connected, involved in the planning, involved in the preparedness, involved in proposing solutions. So 350 Mass has really been on the forefront. They have launched a program called CREW, Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, and next week's kickoff will be one of the first times in the local area that they'll really be engaging residents across the city and beyond with many events. So bringing forward Aaron Troncoso.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Councilor Wu. As you mentioned, my name is Aaron Troncoso, and I represent the Better Future Project and Communities Responding to Extreme Weather, or CREW. CREW is a recently founded nonprofit based in and doing work in Greater Boston, working to help communities prepare for the dangerous effects of climate change and extreme weather through education, service, and emergency planning. As Councilor Wu mentioned, our first major project has been convening the first and hopefully annual Climate Preparedness Week from September 24th to 30th as part of National Preparedness Month in Greater Boston. We've got over 30 events, from a depaving event in Somerville to a community barbecue in Cambridge to a student march led by Boston Latin's Youth Climate Action Network here in Boston. Those are all going to be taking place as part of Climate Prep Week. In planning many of the events, we've been fortunate to have excellent partners within the city government that have been absolutely key in facilitating Climate Prep Week. I'd like to particularly thank Councilor Wu and her team for their support, as well as Nancy Smith at the Boston Public Health Commission for putting on a number of excellent emergency presentation and workshops across the city, David Corby in the Environment Department, and Chris Glass and a host of other librarians in the Boston Public Library system. They're all hosting great events during Climate Prep Week, and would love to see you at some of them. We've also relied on many other nonprofit and community partners, both in the city and in Greater Boston, who I won't thank here, but who are listed on our website at climatecrew.org/prepweek. In the wake of extreme weather events such as Hurricane Florence, Maria, and Irma, and extreme heat all across the Northeast this summer, we believe Climate Prep Week is going to be an invaluable opportunity to reinvigorate the conversation on climate impacts and bring more attention to this important issue. So thanks again to all of our partners and to you, councilors, for your support of Climate Prep Week. We hope to see you at an event next week. Thanks so much.
At this time, if I can also ask all colleagues to quickly come up to take a photo. Thank you.
Oh, sure. So that's all climatecrew.org/prepweek, and I can, yeah.
What's up, Frank?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Moving right along to the regular order of business. Madam Clerk, if you could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Baker is here.
Thank you, Madam President.
And moving on to approval of the minutes, if there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing that there are no corrections, the minutes are so approved. Moving on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 1386, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $417,809 in the form of a grant for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, known as the JAG program, local solicitation. Awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Police Department, the grant will fund 4 domestic violence advocates.
Docket 1386 will be assigned to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Madam Clerk, if we could read dockets 1387 through 1392 together, that would be great.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 1387, message in order to reduce the appropriation for the FY19 reserve for collective bargaining by $155,895 to provide funding for property management for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City and the Municipal Police Patrolmen's Association. Docket number 1388, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $155,895 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Municipal Police Patrolmen's Association. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of October of each fiscal year. The agreements also include other benefits, including new steps beginning in 2018, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on September 17th, 2018. Docket number 1389, message in order to reduce the appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $42,146 to provide funding for the Parks and Recreation Department for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Park Rangers Association. Docket number 1390, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $42,146 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Boston Park Rangers Association. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contracts include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of October for each fiscal year. The agreements also include other benefits, including new steps beginning in 2018, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on September 17th, 2018. Docket number 1391, message in order to reduce the appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $23,806 to provide funding for property management for the FY19 increases contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Municipal Police Superior Officers Association. And then docket number 1392, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation for property management in the amount of $23,806 to cover the FY19 cost items contained within the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Boston and the Municipal Police Superiors Officers Association. The terms of the contract are July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017, and July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2% effective the first pay period of October of each fiscal year. The agreements also include other benefits, including new steps beginning in 2018, filed in the office of the City Clerk on September 17, 2018.
Councilor Sion, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Dockets 1387 through 1392 concern appropriations for 3 collective bargaining agreements. Dockets 1387 and 1388, agreements between Property Management and the Municipal Police Patrolmen's Association. This bargaining unit is made up of approximately 55 members. The contract has an estimated cost of $505,000 over its 4 years, and the supplemental appropriation that we will authorize today for this agreement is $155,895. Dockets 1389 and 1390 is between the Parks and Recreation Department and the Boston Park Rangers Association. This bargaining unit is made up of approximately 13 members at the Parks and Rec Department. The contract has an estimated cost of $132,000 over its 4 years. The supplemental appropriation cost of $42,146. And dockets 1391 and 1392 between Property Management and the Municipal Police Superior Officers Association. This bargaining unit is made up of approximately 7 members at the Property Management Department. The contract has an estimated cost of $77,000 over its 4 years. The supplemental appropriation that we will authorize today is $23,806. Each contract is represented by 2 dockets, one transferring funds from the collective bargaining reserve and the other authorizing the use of those funds to pay for the contract. All 3 contracts are composed of 2 consecutive agreements extending from July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2020. Similar language items on the contracts include caps on sick leave redemption upon retirement and moves to electronic pay stubs. Similar compensation and other cost items include the 2% wage increase effective in October of each year of the contracts, the addition of new steps at 1% increases from the previously existing highest step effective in October 2018 and October of 2019 respectively, and increases the differentials in paid detailed rates. The Committee on Ways and Means has held 3 hearings on collective bargaining agreements since the beginning of the calendar year. Each of these agreements are substantively similar, following similar policy language changes, cost items, step increases, and wage increase schedule that we have seen before. The current FY19 collective bargaining reserve totals $38,361,944 after these 3 unions are taken out of the collective bargaining reserve. We will have remaining $38,140,097. There are 14 outstanding collective bargaining units that remain unresolved to this point, and as Chair of Ways and Means, I request suspension of the rules and passage of these documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Councilor Siomo, who's the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks suspension of the rules and passage of those dockets. I'm going to take them each separately. So starting with docket 1387, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1387 has been passed. Docket 1388, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1388 has been passed. Docket 1389, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1389 has been passed. Docket 1390, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1390 has been passed. Docket 1391, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1391 has been passed. And finally, docket 1392, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1392 has been passed. Moving on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if we could read 1393 through docket 1395 together, that'd be great.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket number 1393, notices received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of August 22nd, 2018. Docket number 1394, notices received from Councilor Zakem of his absence from the city council meeting on Wednesday, September 19th, 2018. And docket number 1395, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of Boston Planning and Development Agency, regarding notice of intent to execute, deliver, and record quitclaim deed conveyance of 115 Federal Street to MCAF Winthrop LLC.
Dockets 1393 through 1395 will be placed on file. Moving on to reports of committees.
Docket number 0263, the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks, to which was referred on February 7th, 2018, docket number 0263, an order for hearing to consider benefits of net zero carbon requirements and incentives for the future construction in the city of Boston, submits a report recommending the order ought to remain in committee.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to begin by thanking the great work of Jessica Morris from my team, as well as Michelle Goldberg and our city messenger, Ron Cobb, from Central Staff. I think, as some of you know, we've been working as a body on net zero carbon for nearly a year now. I wanted to thank the BCEC, the Boston Clean Energy Coalition, as well as so many other groups. We'd be here all day if I were to name them all, who've been willing partners. And every counselor here and your staffs have been involved in this process, and it's been something that I am very, very proud of. The purpose of today's committee report will outline sort of what our roadmap is going forward, the Boston Green Print, if you will. As we all know, net zero carbon is the process of achieving a net zero carbon emissions emitted from a building. Currently, over half of our buildings in Boston contribute to over half of the greenhouse gas emissions in the city, and we can achieve net zero carbon by designing efficient building materials, retrofitting and utilizing off-site renewable energy sources. We began this in December of 2017, again nearly a year ago, and we had 3 very robust working sessions, first in March, the second in May, and the third last month at the end of August. And from that, really a positive, honest, frank discussion of convening relevant stakeholders, folks from the construction industry, folks from the environmental community, folks from law, folks from city planning came together with a whole host of ideas. And what we're going to do in the weeks and months ahead as we wrap up this calendar year, and then we'll likely continue into next calendar year, is come up with the certain proposals to get to net zero carbon. Now, it's not as though we could introduce an ordinance that would just magically make everything net zero carbon. We need to be methodical and we need to be strategic in how we roll things out. Some of these will be ordinances, others will be resolutions, others could be something as simple as a hearing order to get to those things. So some of the ideas that we will be rolling out in the weeks and months ahead include incentivizing density bonuses, lower parking requirements at certain locations, require energy use intensity reporting after a year of operation, include riders during the land disposition process that new construction become net zero carbon, establish a net zero carbon overlay district, advocate for the state building code to follow the Architecture 2030 plan, hire an engineer to conduct a review of energy models and ensure quality of Article 37, support family homes in converting from oil to heat pumps, expedite permitting process for net zero carbon buildings, revise the Florida area ratio definition in the zoning code, which would allow for thicker walls, which would be the thermos effect of building a more energy efficient building, as well as promoting the use of eco roofs going forward, talking about green solar, solar thermal, etc. These are all things that we can do. I like the expression, I wish I could take credit for coming up with it, I didn't, but investing in environmental sound policy is sort of like contributing to your 401k. If you do a little bit by bit, you can really have a profound impact. And we're going to get to some of those impacts a little bit later in this meeting. So having said that, appreciate again the incredible work of all of you who have been partners with me in this effort. We'll be rolling out certain initiatives in the weeks ahead, but did want to have this committee report to sort of tie everything up as a really, really thorough and I think persuasive process. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. At this time, docket 0263 will remain in the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. Moving on to matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 1232, message and order authorizing the Department of Neighborhood Development to accept and expend an award of $4,920,000 from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the FFY17 Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program.
Councilor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to request the suspension and passage of docket number 1232. On Monday, the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery held a hearing for docket 1232 regarding a $4.92 million grant awarded to the Department of Neighborhood Development for the city's Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In July, the team working with D&D to create this strategic plan to end youth and young adult homelessness in Boston, known as the Y5 team, was awarded this grant, and it was a very emotional moment for everyone in the room. I don't think, I think sometimes about the emotion or sometimes a lack of emotion in the work that we do here in the council, and this was a very special moment for myself when this grant was awarded from Kelly Ransom from my staff, who has worked tirelessly with the folks at D&D. But I think most importantly, for the youth and the young adults who are experiencing homelessness or who have recently experienced homelessness, for their work and their very direct effort in getting this grant. The celebration for them that day at Bridge Over Troubled Waters was really amazing to witness and to participate in a very little way. I've now come off my notes totally. I do want to say that this grant was the largest of its kind that the city has ever received. At our hearing this week, we heard from Courtney Trudell, Assistant Director for Supportive Housing for the Department of Neighborhood Development. Councilor Baker was in attendance, and I appreciate his thoughtfulness, his questions, his input. And Courtney reminded both of us that on any given night, there are over 360 youth and young adults who are on our streets or in our shelters. Many of them are living in very dangerous situations, and additionally, we have many youth and young adults who are couch surfing, doubled up, and living in unsafe conditions and not a part of that count. That 360 number is certainly a very, very much underestimated number. The strategic plan that is being created and eventually will be implemented will help, with the help of this HUD grant, will be critical to ensure that youth or young adults no longer experience homelessness in the city of Boston. And we look forward, both here at the council and with the partnership with the administration, we look forward to working and continuing this work with many organizations, individuals, and city and state agencies, as well as the Youth Action Board on this initiative. Our office and our work through my office has been focused on the community engagement aspect of the strategic plan, and I look forward to continuing that work, but ask that this docket 1232, I recommend that this ought to pass today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Anyone else wanting to speak on this? At this time, Councilor Sabi George, who is the chair of the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery, recommends that we accept the committee report and pass docket 1232. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1232 has been passed.
Docket number 1333, message and order for your approval, a declaration of trust entitled My Way Cafe Trust Fund. This trust fund will further promote the public health, safety, convenience, and welfare by promoting the health of students in Boston schools. This trust establishes a fund in the city to retrofit or renovate kitchens and to facilitate serving fresh, healthy meals cooked on site in various public schools.
Councilor Sioma, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We had the committee hearing yesterday. We had Budget Director Justin Sterrett, as well as John Hanlon, the Chief of Operations for BPS. Docket 1333 involves the establishment of a trust fund in the city that will be used to renovate or retrofit kitchens and to facilitate serving fresh, healthy meals cooked on site in our public schools as part of the My Way Cafe program. The fund will be comprised of private monetary equipment and equipment donations coming in large part from the Shaw Family Foundation. The My Way Cafe program, previously known as Hub and Spoke, is a model to replace prepackaged food with dynamic menus that highlight student choice. The program was piloted in 4 East Boston schools during the 2017-2018 school year and will be reopening in 31 schools across East Boston, Roxbury, and Mattapan during this current year. At the hearing, the committee discussed the My Way Cafe program, including pilot learnings, school selection criteria, food policy, as well as the potential for expanding nutritional programs for children beyond school hours. There was discussion about restrictiveness in the trust language as written and about annual financial projections. Reported successes of the My Way Cafe model have included cost efficiencies, waste reduction, increased student participation, and positive student feedback. The My Way Cafe Trust Fund will help expand the program to schools across the district. Therefore, I recommend passage.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to first thank the chair of the committee for hosting such a successful and good committee hearing. I do feel that it was well-informed, and I do feel that in many cases this program is exactly what we want to see from Boston Public Schools and the leadership, not only in East Boston that I have the honor to represent, but to see it roll out in schools that have some of the highest opportunity index issues and highest indications of poverty. So this program is wonderful, it's successful, and I will be voting for it. So where we're going is not the issue for me. To a certain extent, I wanted to point out how we got here. What I felt is, and as the chair had noted, there was discussion about the restrictiveness of the language. The administration presented a fully baked trust to us to simply vote on with no, I felt, any opportunity for feedback. Small suggestions I even had that of the Board of Trustees that maybe a parent or a student would sit there and also talk about the food, or as a part of the discussion was how it could be expanded to BCYF or after school, as the language specifically says it will be on-site only for BPS schools. Again, if the mission is about fresh foods for children in poverty, then I think that there's an opportunity to at least work with the City Council before we vote on it about how it can be expanded. The other issue that I have is that this is a trust that millions of dollars will be flowing in and out of in perpetuity, is what the language says. It is establishing a permanent trust, unlike the one-time funding from federal government that we approve every single year, and we can actually say whether it works or doesn't work. We don't have that kind of oversight after this is established. And so when I ask basic questions, how much money do you expect to come in? How many materials do you expect to come in? What if there's a shortfall? There was no answer. There was not a number, there was not a clarification about what would happen if we do have a shortfall. So are we not going to have those fresh meals that year? Will the Shaw Family Foundation be having an open checkbook? None of those questions were answered. I think there were basic questions about a permanent trust that we're going to establish where the city will have stewardship. So again, I'm voting for this because I do ultimately believe with where we are going, I think the process could be more improved, and I hope when it comes to establishing future trusts, we will have a more robust back and forth.
Thank you very much, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I had the opportunity to attend the hearing as well. I want to thank Councilor Siomo for a good presentation. I will also be supporting it, and I was also encouraged knowing that the program will be expanded into other schools across the district. I'm also looking forward to the cultural sensitivities of certain ethnic groups, such as the Chinese community, the Latino community. So we do have a commitment from the Boston Public Schools that they'll work closely with various ethnic communities as well throughout the city. Looking forward to seeing it enrolled in Josiah Quincy School with the high concentration of Chinese students, and expanded also throughout many schools in public housing. So I'm proud to support this, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to speak on this? At this time, Councilor Siomo, who is the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 1333. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1333 has been passed. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 1396, Councilor O'Malley offered the following resolution in support of a yes vote. on the 2018 Mass Ballot Question Number 3 to preserve the existing 2016 transgender anti-discrimination law.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. 10 years ago, I served as political director at Mass Equality, and during my time there, we spent quite a bit of energy and effort trying to pass and advance the Transgender Non-Discrimination Act. Despite having a majority of both houses of the legislature sign on as co-sponsors, we were unsuccessful. Fortunately, a tireless group of advocates and state elected officials worked to finally advance that 8 years after that, back in 2016. It was signed into law by Governor Baker shortly thereafter. It should be noted that much of the Transgender Non-Discrimination Act, which did pass, had been drawn its inspiration from an ordinance that passed in this city by this city council by former Mayor Tom Menino back in 2002. I believe Councilor Flaherty was the only member serving back then. An ordinance that I would suggest, and history and evidence has borne this out, an ordinance that made the city safer. We are now looking at a repeal by referendum of this very important law. And I'm standing here today to urge all of you to voice our support of equality, of equity, of non-discrimination by passing this resolution today. There will be a veto referendum on November 6, 2018 in the state election. It is question number 3. And a no vote means repeal the existing law. It's a little bit confusing. A yes vote means to uphold the law. I wanted to thank the incredible advocates and our friends at Freedom for All Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition, particularly Krina Patel, who is the coalition director for Freedom of All, who's with us this afternoon. And what we're going to do today, as we have done several other times at this body, speak united with one voice to make sure that we stand up for all Bostonians and for all Massachusetts residents. We cannot allow the special interest groups who have been spewing misinformation and false narratives to undo the progress that we have made in our Commonwealth. It is the utmost importance that when the ballot question is before us this November, we stand together and we vote yes. So I will be asking for suspension of the rules and adoption of this resolution, and appreciate everyone who's already expressed their support going forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor O'Malley, for affirming our shared humanity through this resolution in the same way that we have come together as a body in opposition to sexist, xenophobic, racist, white supremacy, anti-worker statements and actions. We will not fall prey to fear-mongering either in Washington, D.C., or here in our Commonwealth. Everyone should be treated with dignity and respect, and ultimately that's what this resolution is about, choosing love and acceptance over hate and discrimination, a choice I know that this body will be on the right side of, as we have so many times before. As Councilor O'Malley indicated 2 years ago, the state of Massachusetts put forth a mandate that explicitly protected transgender folk in our state from discrimination in all public spaces, a victory that was long overdue. This law makes everyone more safe while also providing everyone the freedom to stand in their truth and to be their authentic selves, a right that no person should ever be stripped of. And to be clear, although everyone has the right to feel safe in intimate spaces like restrooms and locker rooms, this is a law that protects more than that. This law protects transgender people from discrimination in admission to or treatment in public places, period. At hotels, at Red Sox games, at restaurants, at movie theaters, and even at hospitals. These are basic civil rights that should never be decided by popular vote, and a repeal of this law would put the health and well-being of members of the transgender community at severe risk. Now, hate-filled rhetoric says this law will make our women and girls less safe. And since these protections, it's worth noting, were passed in 2016, there has been zero increase of public safety incidents in restrooms in our state. This is exactly why you see many leading organizations fighting for the rights of women and girls and victims of domestic and sexual violence who are standing shoulder to shoulder with advocates, with activists, with business leaders, elected officials, and faith leaders to uphold these protections. In Boston and in Massachusetts, we know that we are all more safe when all of us are treated fairly. So yes, yes to equity, yes to dignity, yes to respect, and yes on 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. And thank you to our audience. This is great. I'm chiming in. Councilor Flynn. Awesome. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you to Councilor O'Malley for your leadership on this issue, and to my colleagues on the City Council for always supporting human rights for all. I rise to offer my support of the resolution. This provision has been the law in the City of Boston and the Commonwealth as well. The City of Boston has always been in the forefront on human rights issues, ensuring everyone in our city is treated with respect and dignity. As Councilor Presley mentioned, in the final analysis, this is about respect and dignity for all people. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I'm assuming you also would like to add your name.
Yes, Madam President.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Presley, as well as Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Wu, as well as the Chair. At this time, Councilor O'Malley seeks suspension of the rules and adoption of docket 1396. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1396 has been passed. Moving on to docket 1397.
Docket number
And actually, Madam Clerk, before we do that, I just want to quickly acknowledge, and I said hello to him earlier, that we have former Boston City Councilor Chuck Turner with us. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome. Docket number 1397, Councilors O'Malley and Flynn offered the following order for hearing to examine the safety of the City of Boston's gas infrastructure, the prevention of dangerous gas leaks, and preparedness of emergency response.
Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I'd like to invoke Rule 12 to add City Councilor at Large Ayanna Presley as an original co-sponsor.
Any objections? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Presley. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to introduce a hearing order to examine the safety of our city's natural gas infrastructure, Boston's emergency response practices, and the prevention of natural gas incidents and leaks. I want to begin by thanking my 2 co-sponsors on this initiative, District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn, with whom I've partnered in working in support of the incredibly talented men and women who are currently locked out from National Grid, as well as City Councilor at Large Ayanna Presley, with whom I have partnered on a whole host of environmental issues, including a gas leaks ordinance. And because of the enormity of this issue, I think it's only fitting, and I am certain that Councilor Presley will continue her dogged advocacy on this and so many environmental issues in her next career move in a couple of months. Like many of you, I watched media reports out of what was happening in the Merrimack Valley last Thursday and Friday, and it was shocking. It was terrifying. And I think while I want to be clear, the purpose of this hearing order isn't to create a false panic or to offer an incendiary headline-grabbing mechanism, we need to have these conversations. In the City of Boston, we have among the oldest gas infrastructure in the country. I think it's 2nd or 3rd nationwide. We have a number of gas leaks, and while gas leaks weren't the trigger necessarily for what happened in the Merrimack Valley, that's something that we as a body have been working on. When we passed a gas leaks ordinance, National Grid, rather than working with this city, decided to take us to court. They had somewhat of a victory, about a partial victory in Suffolk Superior Court, but and this happened 2 years ago. We passed it in 2016. It was 2017 where they brought litigation. It was incredibly disappointing to me because we were trying to work together. This wasn't an overly onerous ordinance. It was a common sense ordinance that passed nearly unanimously and was signed into law by this body. And rather than working with us to address these public health threats, they decided to fight us on it. It's incredibly disappointing to me that this chamber today is filled with incredibly talented men and women who want to be back to work, making our streets safe, but have been locked out by National Grid. That is unconscionable. And we stand here with every one of the people in this chamber and those who are not with us but want to be back to work. This is a public safety issue. This is a public health issue. And we need to convene all the relevant stakeholders. I don't want this to be an adversarial exercise, but my God, we need to bring people together, from the City of Boston, our first responders, our public safety employees, our utility employees, the residents of Boston to come together and figure out what are we doing? What is that second, third, fourth step that we are taking to make sure we can do everything we possibly can, everything we conceivably can to make sure that the streets are safe in the City of Boston. We have seen some heroism across the Commonwealth in the days since last Thursday. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the great work of Boston Fire Department, Boston EMS, the Boston Police Department, and United Steelworkers Local 12003 and 1212-13, all of whom volunteered. Some weren't taken up on their volunteer requests. Others have been, to make sure that we could assist and could serve our neighbors in the Merrimack Valley. As we support the recovery effort up north, municipalities like Boston with homes that rely on natural gas should check and double-check our safety procedures to make sure that this tragedy is never repeated. While natural gas is an important source of energy for our city, we have known about the dangers for quite a long time. Flammable natural gas is transported in pipelines that are prone to changes in pressure and leaks that can impact human health and safety, kill trees, and increase our carbon emissions. That's why we passed the Gas Leaks Ordinance in 2016. That's why all of us took great concern when Spectra Energy, working with other utilities, including National Grid, installed the West Roxbury Lateral Pipeline, a 750 PSI pipeline that runs through the heart of my district, across from an active quarry, it should be noted. Unfortunately, our ordinance that we passed as it relates to gas leaks was disputed in court by utility companies. And as we learn about gas company failures in Lawrence, like the inability to locate gas shutoff valves, we should revisit what actions we can take under this ordinance. I'm proud of our efforts as a council to address both human health and safety concerns, as well as the environmental challenges of natural gas. I'm also proud of the workers who help keep us safe. As Senators Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey plan a congressional hearing on how federal agencies can learn from and prevent natural gas incidents, the heroism that we saw in Lawrence, North Andover, and Andover shows that cities can have an important role as well. The natural gas incident last week is a reminder that Boston can further its commitment to safety by making sure that we have the right features, that we have coordination across all silos, and the resident education necessary to protect our people from the unlikely but nevertheless devastating disaster. I hope our hearing can explore natural gas safety features like updated shutoff valves, communication strategies to inform residents about disaster preparedness, and improved coordination between the city, its residents, the private companies, and the utilities who are responsible for this infrastructure. I ask you to join me at this hearing, and we'll take direct action on these important issues. We cannot simply afford to wait any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we better stop now. He's getting a little red. Before I turn it over to Councilor Flynn, I just want to thank Councilor O'Malley, not only for his leadership on this, but these issues. He's been talking about these issues for quite some time, even before I joined the council, so thank you for your leadership. Thank you guys for recognizing his leadership on these issues. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you also to my friend and colleague, Matt O'Malley, for your many years of leadership on this important issue. I'd also like to thank our good friend and colleague, Councilor Presley, for her leadership as well on this issue. I'm proud to be here today, and also proud to be with the members of the steelworkers that are present. 12003, 12012, and proud to be with Joe and John as well. To put it mildly, the horrible events last week in Merrimack Valley and Lawrence, Andover, North Andover, were a scary scene and very dangerous. One tragic fatality, dozens injured, thousands evacuated from their homes. We pray for him and his family and all those affected by this troubling incident. It should all give us pause to reflect on how critical it is that we maintain the safety of natural gas infrastructure in our city. This discussion is not meant to cause panic, however, but I do find it necessary that we act with an abundance of caution and have this conversation to examine the safety practices of dealing with natural gas and our emergency preparedness. I'd like to highlight some events that have occurred in Boston in recent years. Last fall, A1 Boston Police Station, every window was blown out due to no pipeline inspectors. Tremont Street, Boston, a gas leak that went on for 70 days with explosive levels under the steel plates. The Boston Fire Department responded many times. North Washington Street Bridge, the gas blew all over the North End for months. So in this hearing, I think there are a number of questions that I want to ask, and I want them to be answered by National Grid. Has National Grid been doing their job, mandated programs, since the lockout on June 25th? How many mandated programs has National Grid completed? Are there 400 pressure regulator stations, and have they been inspected? How many critical valves are in the system, and have they been inspected? Are meters being checked for accuracy within 2%? What is the emergency response plan now with the disaster and 1,200 workers locked out? How many meters have been changed since the lockout? All meters have to be changed every 7 years. Are the gate boxes accessible? What is taking place in regards to training? I'd like to see the records on training. As someone that served 25 years in the United States Navy, we had training every single day, formal training, on-the-job training. I don't know if these replacement workers have the necessary training. This is a lockout by an international company. These workers want to go back to work. They want to go back to work with a contract. This is about dignity and respect. I'm embarrassed by National Grid, the way they treated these workers. They work hard for us. They're our school teachers. They're active in our community. They're active in our PTA. They coach our kids in Little League. They help special needs kids. They work hard to keep us safe, and they deserve better than what National Grid did to them. Again, I want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Presley, for their leadership on this issue. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. I'm getting looks, but I'm bending the rules clearly because this is a big issue. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I won't be long. My colleagues both spoke very eloquently to the questions we need to be asking. I did just want to commend Councilor O'Malley and just make the point, and he alluded to it a little bit in his opening remarks, that this is not a reactive measure by this body. This work has been thoughtfully and proactively an issue that has been spotlighted by Councilor O'Malley in partnership with Councilor Zachem for a long time. We are at a watershed moment, and although we don't want to stoke the flames of fear, I do want to bring into the space the name of the young man whose life we have lost and whose family is irreparably changed. So we don't want to stoke the flames of fear here. However, a life was lost, and so I wanted to bring Lionel Rondon into this space, and we'll adjourn this meeting shortly in his memory. Along with, I wanted to send prayers up to the family and all those impacted in Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover. Send prayers of thanks to our first responders and to the many heroic, compassionate, and caring neighbors who stepped in. And again, this is a watershed moment, and it does allow us and prompt us with a sense of urgency, albeit thoughtfulness, to examine our own gas infrastructure to ensure that we do everything possible to locate defects, to make sure that we are on point so far as inspections are concerned, and that we do everything possible to prevent another catastrophic failure from happening. I remember being with many of the locked out National Grid workers, along with all of you, on a very hot day in front of the State House, and workers over and over again said, "God forbid." And God forbid happened, and we can't let it happen again. And so for all the questions that have been already illuminated that we'll need to raise in this hearing, which we'll have in an expedited manner, we just can't underscore enough that a part of that solution is a well-trained, and let me underscore, well-treated workforce. And that means supporting National Grid workers who are currently being locked out. So again, this issue of natural gas infrastructure is not new to this body. Again, I want to commend Councilor O'Malley and Zachem for leading on this and pushing for improved coordination with our utilities and public works as we improve our roads and sidewalks and correct natural gas leaks. I look forward to this hearing and continue to work with my colleagues to ensure our gas infrastructure is safe, and we have all the preparations in place for any emergency response should that occur.
Thank you,
But we'll do
Councilor
everything to make
Percy.
sure it doesn't.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First, Madam President, I'd like to sign my name and thank the councilors for putting this hearing order forward. I didn't plan on saying anything because Councilor O'Malley and Councilor Preston and Councilor Flynn summed everything up very well. But I did want to say I thought today's meeting was ironic that at the beginning of today's meeting, through the Chair of Ways and Means, we passed 6 collective bargaining agreements just today. 6. So somewhere at a bargaining table, Mayor Walsh's administration, Parks Rangers, Muni, Superior officers of the Munis, they sat together, concessions were made, progress was made, agreements were made, people went back to work. This is National Grid has a moral obligation to take care of our men and women. They have a moral obligation to make sure that the safety of our families, and they have a moral obligation, in my opinion, to make sure that their priorities are straight, and they aren't. So get back to the table.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
I want to commend the makers and your leadership, especially Councilor O'Malley, what you've been able to do with the environment and really take that conversation into various realms of social justice, and your leadership and watching you do that is something I want to emulate, being a freshman on the council. So I just wanted to thank you and note that I'm watching you, and I like how you are able to move this oftentimes wonky conversation about the environment into real working people conversation. So thank you so much. I want to thank you, Councilor Flynn, also for your leadership. I think from day one you have demonstrated that you are there for working people, there for making sure housing is affordable, and your leadership and your voice is something also I look forward to continually working with. I really don't have that much to add to the incredible voices that have already spoken on this. I'll just say very simply, when you lock out labor, I certainly feel less safe. When you do that and you make sure, I think people need to understand just some basic things about history and unions and what they have done for us. They don't only fight for basic living wages and assuring that the skill sets that you fought hard to get are compensated, which they should be. They also have been at the forefront of worker safety. I'm from Michigan, and I am from mining country. We fed Detroit for years. But for the union, a lot of young men would have died in those mines. It was the safety standards that the unions fought for all workers, even the ones who are not unionized, who benefit from those very basic understandings of how a person should have to work, the equipment that they need to have, and ensuring that they have a voice in making sure that their colleagues are also protected. It is organized labor, and I want to be clear, this lockout is about attacking unions. That's what it's about. But highlighting the fact that when you attack unions and you attack labor, we become less safe is 100% to your leadership, Councilor O'Malley, and again to yours as well, Councilor Flynn. I just stand here in solidarity. I want to acknowledge one of my constituents, also a member of USW. Neil Crowley is here. He called me advocating quite firmly for the union. You didn't have to advocate that hard, though. You didn't have to fight that hard. And I want to say, I stand in solidarity with you to the end, because you stand for all workers, even those who aren't part of the union. You stand for safety. You stand for equity. And I want to thank you. We've been thanking a lot of the folks here, but I want to thank you for all that you're doing. And I'm so sorry that you're in the position, but we're with you to the end. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to I will be brief. I want to applaud my colleagues, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Presley, for their leadership on this, and Councilor O'Malley's continued championship of this effort. And one quote that from Councilor O'Malley's remarks about coordination across silos, and realizing that that is missing in this conversation, and that the men and the women that are here today are an important part of finding the solutions to the scariness that has been created. And I will say to Councilor Presley's point about the men and women that deserve the dignity, that deserve the respect, that when we're not giving that to them, when we're not including them in this conversation, when we're not recognizing and realizing and appreciating the solutions that they have, that we've created negligence, that supports negligence, and that creates a real fear, not a perception of fear, a reason to be afraid, and that fear is real. And we shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't pretend that it doesn't exist, because every day that these men and women are not working, every day that we are making exceptions to safety for our communities, for our neighborhoods in the city of Boston and across the Commonwealth, is another day that we should be fearful for our neighbors and for ourselves and for our families. So I applaud this work. I look forward to Councilor Flynn asking his questions, and I only look more forward to the answers that we should receive as a council, that we deserve as a council, as we represent not just the men and women that are in this room today, but the residents across the city of Boston and across the Commonwealth. So I ask that my name please be added. Thank you for your leadership, and look forward to getting to this, our work here, but the greater resolution and ensuring greater safety for all of our residents quickly. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. There's really not much more to be said, so I just wanted to stand and take in the heart that's in this room and that you all represent. I was really moved to see in all of the incredibly painful and terrifying and emotional coverage of the incidents in the other part of our state, that not only were locked out workers among the first to reach out a hand and say, how can we help? How can we offer our training, our expertise, our skills when we are being shut out from using those to support our families? How can we help those in need? But then even when rejected by the companies to get to use those skills and that training, to be there on the ground, just passing out water, setting up cots, helping the people who really need it in that moment. So I'm here to pay tribute to all of you, and it's part of the labor movement. It's part of the example that we set in supporting an organization and movements that support people, that support families. So I want to thank you. I also want to just make an extra little dig at the way that this industry is being organized from the federal level. We fought. We were clawing, protesting, lying in the trenches out in West Roxbury, only to have the federal government, the commission that was set up, all staffed by people who are either formerly executives of these multi-million-dollar companies or tied financially to them, to have the court system then affirming that. So this is really about thinking broadly about the entire energy sector. We have jobs available in the green energy sector. It's growing 12 times faster than the traditional sector. We have to make sure we're thinking for the future. And certainly we're pushing this as hard as we can. We've got to get all of you all workers back to work and fixing the leaks, and there's so much work to do. But then how can we make sure that for the next generation, we're building the right jobs, the sustainable jobs to keep us going and keep our economy and our environment in place? Thanks.
Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. So I will just add, just briefly, my voice to the chorus here to offer my support to the working women and men in this room who have been locked out, just commending everyone who was so supportive of the efforts in Merrimack Valley. I'm really encouraged by the community organizations that have begun to organize around that effort as well. For me, this is very much a public safety issue that's already been highlighted. I live in a neighborhood where we often smell gas, and we're led to believe that we're crazy. So people are really fearful and scared about what happened to our neighbors and what is happening with this lockout. So everything's already been said, so I just wanted to add my voice. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you do every single day, and I hope that you are back to work very quickly. And please add my name. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair. And I'll quickly add just two things. I'm supposed to remain neutral up here, but I think it's important to draw out a couple of points. One, there's a distinction between a lockout and a strike. This is a lockout. I think that often gets lost. And then the second, this effect is more than just public safety. I don't know about all counselors, but in my office, and I think a few others, we've received a lot of notifications on delayed projects in our district, projects that are needed in terms of housing for our seniors, for those who are disabled, more affordable housing. A lot of these projects are delayed and are stuck because of this lockout. So the impact has many ripple effects in many different spaces that affect the work we do every single day to meet the needs not only of the folks who sit in this room, but the average citizen who's going to and from work and who needs a place to live, a place to be, a place to eat, a grocery store, or something else. So this has been gone on far too long. So thank you for the advocacy. Thank you for the folks in the room. We normally don't allow clapping, but I figured, you know what, hopefully it made you feel good to clap. So we allowed that today. So thank you guys, and thank you to all of my colleagues. At this time, docket 1397 will be assigned to the Committee on Government, wait a minute, on Sustainability, Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. Thank you.
Docket number 1398, Councilors Edwards and Janey offer the following order for hearing regarding a biannual review of the Boston Employment Commission and Boston Residents' Jobs Policy.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think it's poignant that we're here talking about labor and about workers and assuring that folks in Boston are working and that the workforce that we have is reflective of Bostonians. I want to thank this body actually for its work last year in 2017 in updating the Boston jobs policy and assuring that we had a higher percentage of folks who live in Boston on there, higher percentage of people of color, and higher percentage of women. And so part of that update also included the biannual review that is to be set up both in April and in October to assure that the commission that the mayor appoints 7 people to is actually, you know, what they're doing, what they're seeing, the reports, and other things that they're looking at. They're making sure that they're looking at the percentage, they're looking at the women, they're looking at compliance, they're calling in developers, they're calling in labor, they're actually looking at the total amount of work hours, and they're looking at the total amount of those work hours as they relate to women on the job, as they relate to Bostonians, as they relate to people of color. And in those biannual reviews, we're supposed to look at the prior 6 months to see how we are doing. It's a 30,000-foot view, and I want to thank also those folks who are committed to doing that view and doing that report. I believe it's Travis Watson, he's the commission chair. Charles Cofield, Local 67, he's a business agent. Mark Fortune, Local 151 business agent. Jorge Martinez from Project Right. John Redd, who's retired from the BPDA, and Deborah Wright of Wentworth Institute of Technology. So we have a commission, we have folks who are supposed to meet, and I'm really excited about having that report to make sure that we're actually seeing what's going on.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Edwards, for putting forth this hearing order. I'm very proud to join you on this hearing order. I also want to acknowledge.
You also want to acknowledge
Councilor Turner, who is in the room with us today, for his work on this issue. As someone who is a community organizer, has been fighting for economic justice issues, I certainly care very deeply about making sure that the people who are on these jobs, on these sites, reflect the diversity of this city. That is extremely important. So when we talk about these good-paying jobs, we need to make sure that, one, they're Boston residents, and oftentimes we see folks from other towns and even other states on these jobs, but that they're also people of color and that they're women. These are good-paying jobs in our community, and we need to make sure that all of the jobs, these job sites, are diverse. Certainly, I want to commend Travis Watson and the other commissioners on the BEC who play a very important role in making sure that the ordinance is followed. I think this council did really good work in changing, amending the ordinance so that there are higher goals that we have that really would reflect the diversity if we meet those goals. As a district city councilor and someone who cares about this issue, I play a very active role and monitoring the construction jobs in my district. So I put together a committee. We meet every other week, and we look at projects in my job to review these goals and to look at the numbers to make sure that we are meeting those goals. There are some projects that do better than others. There are some, including some city projects, that have done very poorly, so I've brought them to the table as well. I think it's very important that this body keep an eye on this, and so I'm very much interested in having this hearing so that we can get down to the nitty-gritty. Again, I want to acknowledge the work that the BEC is doing and all of those on the monitoring committee that are looking at the jobs for at least my district and for the work that they're doing. So again, thank you, Councilor Edwards, and I look forward to the hearing.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Or add the name? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair, and Councilor Baker. The docket number 1398 will be assigned to the Committee on Jobs, Wages, and Workforce Development.
Docket number 1399, Councilors Edwards and Janey offer the following: an ordinance for the establishment of a commission on economic justice in the City of Boston's construction industry.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you again. I wanted to first suspend the rules and add Councilor Presley as a original co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, any objections to suspending the rules and adding Councilor Presley? Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Presley. Thank you, Councilor Edwards.
Thank you. So I wanted to note, we have filed this actually establishing a new commission on equity. And this is, again, looking directly at the construction industry. This is more a granular level conversation that we feel is necessary. While the other BEC commission is more of a 30,000-foot view, looking at the numbers, looking at what's going on, this one really brings labor, both organized and not organized, to the table to talk about how we can work with them and to have the difficult conversation. The fact is, we did raise the standards. That's wonderful. But how we're going to get there, and the fact that we still fall below them in so many levels, is a problem. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we establish this commission and make sure that we are supplementing the conversation and assuring that we have reporting and, most importantly, in no way, shape, or form are challenging or questioning whether people should be organized with labor, but really working with organized labor to make sure all people have good jobs, prevailing wages, and assuring that they also have a voice and that we reflect how Boston looks. The fact is, we are a union town. I'll say that proudly. And unfortunately, many of our unions do not reflect the diversity of our town. That is not to say that we should ever criticize the organizing of labor. That's to say that we're going to organize with labor to make sure that the unions start to look like us. And in many cases, we don't use organized labor on our projects. And again, we invite the private industry and those folks who don't organize or use organized labor to come to the table. And we have a separate set of questions for them, not only asking them about the diversity, but also assuring when you do have labor, how do you assure that the gender equity is fair? How do you assure that we are not simply hiring people of color and then paying them below even the living wage, not even the prevailing wage? How do we make sure that when people are not part of organized labor, they're actually getting paid what they're worth? These are good conversations. These are necessary. These are difficult conversations, but we need to have them. And so we propose having them, again, twice a year and looking at having them separately with the labor, organized labor, and then also with the private industry. This is something that I think will only lead to greater solutions and actually a more cohesive, community-based standard for how we're going to make sure that we reflect our labor force. What also differentiates us from the BEC is who appoints who will be on this new commission. Each of the district city councilors will be able to present names to the mayor from which the mayor will pick who will come on to the commission. The mayor then also has 4 people on his own to appoint as well. So we see the city council really being there with the community and making sure that when we establish this commission, it's a commission, the people's commission, and we're looking not just at 30,000 feet, but right there on a day-to-day basis and ensuring that we reflect all of Bostonians. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Edwards and Councilor Presley, for your work on this. Certainly want to again highlight and acknowledge and thank Councilor Turner for his work on this. As I said before, this is about making sure that Boston residents, people of color, and women are working, and that the workers reflect the rich diversity of our city. I see this as an economic justice issue. As I monitor these jobs, at least in my district, oftentimes there's a blame game. And you have some folks are blaming the union for not being diverse enough. Other folks are blaming the contractors for just using their core crew and not really trying to bring folks up and build a pipeline of other workers. And then folks blame the community. Well, people don't have the skill set, or they show up late, or what have you. This is going to provide us with the opportunity to come together. And sometimes there may be some difficult conversations, as Councilor Edwards has already said, but I think here the real goal is how we can be productive and move forward toward the goals. We have new goals established, 51%, 40%, 12%, and we want to hit those goals. These are good jobs, and our residents deserve these jobs, and we need to make sure that there's equity and that there's diversity, and we need to identify any challenges or barriers that may be in the way, and then also think about the opportunities for moving forward. And with this commission, I believe that we will be able to do that. So again, I think it's important that we all come to the table, organized labor and in non-union contractors as well, to really look at the challenges and the opportunities and how we move forward together around achieving these goals. So thank you both, and thank you, Chuck.
Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I thank Councilor Edwards and Janey for their leadership and their partnership on this. And of course, we want to thank Councilor Turner, who has been so steadfast. And it's very full circle. My first 2 years on the council, convened a working group for 2 years with Councilor Ross, with the tradeswomen and Beige and Boston Workers Alliance, and ultimately we were able to amend the Boston Residents Jobs Policy, prompting the BEC to put the data online. And we know that which gets measured gets done. And so consequently, we saw 3 times as many women in the trades. Councilor Turner, I want to commend you specifically on that, because not only have you been an incredible advocate for all social and economic justice issues, and especially for those that are disenfranchised and marginalized, disproportionately people of color, but you were so vigilant about the need for more women to see the trades as a viable path to providing for their families. And so you've always pushed for that worker parity and that gender parity, and so I thank you for that. And because we did put that data online, we did see the number of women grow, particularly in the construction trades, and now 50% of that workforce out of that growth are women of color. So I want to thank you for that. And then we spoke about the further amendments and additions that have been codified by this body, and then including getting the best practices for how to grow the number of women to continue to do that, codified as a part of this. But I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Bruce Bowling. We would not have the Boston Residence Jobs Policy were it not for this visionary and this visionary and yet pragmatic leader that wanted. We know every law is only as good as its enforcement, but we wouldn't be able to offer amendments to strengthen that if we did not have that floor. And so I do just want to bring Councilor Bowling into this space and thank him for laying the groundwork. And I do think ultimately, since we aren't at a point yet where we're able to fully fund compliance monitors, and you do see communities standing in the gap of that, that this is a collective accountability in the name of worker parity, in the name of economic and social mobility, freedom, and justice. And we continue to talk about our commitment to address the wealth and wage gap in this city. This is how we do it. And so we have to continue to be, in the words of Councilor Edwards, granular in the attention that we bring to this issue, to hold ourselves collectively accountable, because this is ultimately how we make great strides in closing the wealth and wage gap. So again, I thank all of you for your partnership. Thank you, Councilor Turner. Thank you to the entire coalition. And thank you, Councilor Bowling.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to add my gratitude to the sponsors for this and to Councilor Turner and Chuck. I wanted to note that when I had first had some conversations about this a while ago, as you've been working on it for a long time, my drive was, well, why can't this be a commission for economic justice across all sectors, right? We need to sweep everything in. And I so appreciate the focus and the push to really implement what we have on the books now with BRJP and BEC, and to say that we as a city, how can we have the moral authority to ask any other sector to do this work of inclusion and creating opportunities for our residents if we're not doing everything within our own power, our own jobs, our own spending to do that as well. So I'm really excited to see this come to the floor. Also reminds me that Councilor Presley and I need to be doing the biannual review on the procurement reform ordinance that the council had passed last year. So there are lots of threads coming together. Really excited to support this work. Thank you. Thank you,
Councilor Wu. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask my name to be part of this. One aspect I'd like to focus on, Madam President, is we do see a lot of returning veterans, a lot of women veterans coming back home after service. We see a lot of communities of color veterans coming back from their service as well. I'd love to see them get back into the Boston economy, get a good paying job. They're highly skilled, they're highly trained. I think they'd welcome the opportunity to be part of the Boston economy, to get into the trades, to get into a good paying job. So that's something I want to focus on. One of the council hearings I do propose is a hearing on women veterans, and this is something maybe I can tie in as well. And also, Madam President, is looking at those in the disability community as well, seeing if there's an opportunity for them to get back into the workplace. I know a lot of disabled do want to work. They're hungry to work. They want the opportunity to work. They can do so many different things. They just at times don't get the chance, or they're not as welcomed as they should be. But that's something I would like to focus on, is giving our disabled veterans and all those in the disability community, giving them an opportunity, whether it's through job training or through more education or employment opportunities, giving them an opportunity to at least pursue the option of participating in this Boston economy. So I'd like to say thank you to Councilor Edwards, Councilor Janey, for their tremendous work on this issue. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flynn, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair, and Councilor Baker. Docket 1399 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations. Okay, I am informed by the clerk that we have 2 late files, and which in the absence of objection will be added to today's agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the matters are added. Madam Clerk, if you could read the first one.
The first late file matter filed by Michael F. Flaherty, Boston City Councilor at Large, dated September 19, 2018. Dear President Campbell, please be advised that I will not be in attendance at today's Boston City Council meeting on Wednesday, September 19, 2018, due to a sudden illness. Please ask that the city clerk read this matter into the public record. Thank you sincerely, Michael F. Flaherty, Boston City Councilor at Large.
The first late file matter will be placed on file.
Second late file matter was offered by City Councilor Anissa Asabi George, offered in the City Council, an order for a working session regarding the opioid crisis. Whereas elected officials should work collaboratively to create viable solutions to the opioid crisis, therefore be it ordered that the Boston City Council and the Boston State Delegation convene a working session regarding a collaborative approach to tackle the opioid crisis, filed in Council September 19th, 2018.
Councilor Sabi George, you
I'll
have the
just
floor.
speak to it briefly.
Perfect, thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. After some back and forth regarding appropriate notification and clarification about the process to notify, we've covered all of our bases. We've done a number of different notifications. This now will have a docket number. Really, and I apologize for the confusion to my colleagues and to my staff, and just want to make sure that we're doing things appropriately. I find it frustrating and also see the difficulty in getting us to the table to work on things that we should be working to together as a group in a productive manner. It is not an effort to exclude the public. It's just my desire to create an opportunity for us to talk about this together and include not just our state colleagues, but each other at the table at the same time. And, you know, Councilor O'Malley mentioned the word, this creation of silos and this the challenge of silos when they're created, and I think in the work around the opioid crisis and the work around helping those in active addiction and finding recovery, we've got to figure out ways to get through those silos, and this effort here is to create an opportunity for us to be together and to talk about the crisis of the opioid addiction together. We will not have this meeting will be open to the public, but there will not be public testimony. This is an opportunity for us to talk about the work that is underway, that's been done, and that needs to be focused on going forward. So this meeting is on Monday, the 24th at 10 a.m. in the Curley room. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor Sabi George. And this second late file matter will be assigned to the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery. And just so that we wouldn't violate any open meeting law or even the spirit of the open meeting law, we're doing it this way to encourage all colleagues to participate. So thank you, Councilor Sabi George, and thank you to your team as well. Anyone wishing to pull anything from the green sheets? Moving right along, I am informed by the clerk there is one late file matter to be added to the consent agenda, which in the absence of objection will be added. Seeing and hearing no objection, the late file matter will be added to the consent agenda. This time the chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. At this time, anyone looking to make an announcement? Councilor Edwards, for what purpose do you rise?
Purpose to make a brief statement.
Regarding?
Regarding a Bostonian who has passed away.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I rise to simply acknowledge the passing of a great friend of mine who I met probably when I was just coming into Boston and really getting involved in worker organizing. He helped me to learn Portuguese. He helped me to understand how to work with and around worker communities. It's my dear friend, Jovan da Silva. He's Brazilian-American, and he had dedicated his life here to helping not only fellow Brazilians, but helping to found the Brazilian Immigrant Center, now the Brazilian Worker Center. He's on the board when I joined it as a young attorney, naive about organizing, and he taught me so much. He organized so much for other people's rights that it's a shame that he ultimately couldn't fulfill his one of his many dreams, and that is to become a U.S. citizen. And then even more unfortunate that he felt the need to go home to really live out the rest of his life in dignity and respect that I think has been robbed of so many other immigrants. He is a great friend, and we joked all the time online that one day when I go back to Brazil, I'm definitely coming to his beautiful home that he saved up to build. And so it was devastating to find out that he had died in Brazil with family. So I have created this. He was an Alston Brighton resident. He had done everything he could for that community as well. And so I drafted or have this certificate in his name. And to his family, I just want to say, Jovan foi amigo de mim. Ele foi mentor e me ajuda muito. Eu sempre estou aqui como vereadora porque ele me ensinou tanto de coisas. E eu sempre vou falar o nome dele, e também eu nunca vou esquecer o que ele fez. E todas as vezes que ele luta, ele está conosco. So, to his family, thank you so much. He taught me everything. I'm a city councilor because of him. And wherever there's a fight for justice, he's there. And I know that I will see him again one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else looking to make an announcement? At this time, I would like all guests, colleagues, and staff to please rise as we adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. I'm just going to grab something from for Councilor Siomo, Mary Margaret Fitzpatrick. For Councilor Janey, Miss Muriel Patton, who is the matriarch of their family. For Councilor McCarthy, Lieutenant Michael Chapman. For Councilor O'Malley, Gerard Linehan. For Councilor Flaherty, Regina Vega. For Councilor Wu, Tad Constantine. For Councilor Presley, Councilor Janey, as well as the Chair, Rahim Baraka. For the Chair, Karen Glasgow. For Councilor Asabi George, Gaban Barboza da Silva. And for the entire council, because his name was referenced today, Leonel Rawdon. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves today that when we adjourn today's meeting, we do so in the memory of those individuals that were named. We're scheduled to meet here again on Wednesday, September 26th at noon in this chamber at Boston City Hall. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Council is adjourned.